More sexual assault allegations have rocked Congress and the news business as allegations surfaced against some of the biggest names in those industries. Meanwhile, President Trump broke his silence on Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore, coming out in support of an accused sexual predator. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. For almost 2 weeks, Trump has faced repeated questions about his position on Moore, and for 2 weeks, Trump has done everything he could to avoid answering them. For example, yesterday, he ignored shouted questions from reporters about Moore and announced that for the Thanksgiving holiday, he had plans to get out of D.C. altogether.
I just want to wish everybody a very, very happy Thanksgiving. We're going to be working very hard during the recess in Florida. We'll go to Florida.
Only Trump could get "we're going to be working very hard" and "we're going to Florida" in the same sentence. Maybe Trump thinks he's working hard because Twitter went from 140 characters to 280. My workload has doubled. Sometimes I have to type tax cuts and hashtag MAGA in the same tweet. So now for 2 weeks, since the news about Moore first broke, we've been waiting to find out if Trump could summon at least a shred of decency and disavow a man accused of preying on teenage girls. And today, we found out that the old saying is true: sexual predators of a feather flock together.
We don't need a liberal person in there, a Democrat.
Is an accused child molester better than a Democrat? Is an accused
Well, he
child
denies
molester
it.
better
Look,
than
he
a
denies it. I mean, if you look at what is really going on and you look at all the things that have happened over the last 48 hours, he totally denies it. He says it didn't happen.
And in fairness to Trump, who are you going to believe? 9 women who don't know each other and whose stories have been corroborated by dozens of independent sources? Or a guy who looks like the Marlboro Man's deadbeat dad? But one... I gotta run out for cigarettes, but I am cigarettes! But one of the most revealing parts came when Trump denounced Moore's Democratic rival, Doug Jones, a lifelong prosecutor who convicted the KKK members responsible for the Birmingham church bombing that killed 4 little girls, as soft on crime.
Jones, I've looked at his record. It's terrible on crime. I can tell you for a fact, we do not need somebody that's going to be bad on crime, but I can tell you, you don't need somebody who's soft on crime like Jones.
He's soft on crime. You're siding with an accused child molester over a guy who prosecuted the KKK. You're so soft, you look like a tub of melted Play-Doh. And Trump, of course, is not alone. He's not alone in backing Moore, who's been accused of sexual assault by 9 women, several of whom were teenagers at the time. Yesterday, White House Counselor Kellyanne Conway urged Alabamans to vote for Moore to help pass GOP tax cuts. And an advisor to a pro-Trump super PAC, Katie Walsh, a former White House official, made a similar argument. Listen as she tries to have it both ways on Moore.
The allegations against, Judge Moore are deeply troubling, and I believe that he should step aside if there's any truth to them at all. But the reality is, Kellyanne is right that we need the votes to pass tax reform. And so where the president is on this, I believe, and Sarah Sanders has been vocal on this, which is it's up to the people of Alabama. And I think, they'll make their decision in a couple weeks here.
So their position is literally Roy Moore should step aside, but if he doesn't, you should vote for him. That's going to make their pro-Moore TV ads very awkward.
Who is Roy Moore? The New York Times says 4 more women have accused Roy Moore of misconduct. And the New Yorker reports that Moore was banned from the Gadsden Mall. And more than 20 Republicans have called for Roy Moore to step aside. But if he doesn't, you should vote for him anyway, so we can give corporations a giant tax cut. Roy Moore, he should step aside. But if he doesn't, make him a senator, okay? Paid for by a group of chicken ass.
Meanwhile, as Trump sides with Roy Moore, the avalanche of sexual assault allegations that have consumed virtually every aspect of society, from politics to entertainment to media, continued this week. For example, yesterday we learned that 8 women told the Washington Post that longtime television host Charlie Rose made unwanted sexual advances towards them, including lewd phone calls and walking around naked in their presence. Good Lord. Usually when someone that old is walking around naked, a couple of male nurses lead him right back to his room. That's right, Charlie Rose walked around naked. It's the only time anyone's ever said, "Thank God there are no lights on this set." Here's a good rule of thumb. If your face isn't pulling in the babes, your penis isn't gonna make the difference. Everybody's penis is 100% less attractive than their face. Women don't love the penis. If they love the man, they'll tolerate the penis. The best your penis can ever hope for is, well, all right. This whole situation is like a reverse Bachelor. Nobody wants to accept this Rose. In fact, the Post reported that there were striking commonalities in how Rose treated the women around him. Two said that while they were working for Rose at his residences or were traveling with him on business, he emerged from the shower and walked naked in front of them. A woman, then in her 30s, who was at Rose's home in 2010 to discuss a job opportunity, said Rose appeared before her in an untethered bathrobe, naked underneath. You know, I'll just say it might be time to retire the bathrobe entirely. It's a terrible idea for a garment. Here's a giant towel that you tie together with a skinnier towel. And you never hear a positive news story involving a bathrobe. It's never family of four pulled from burning house by man in bathrobe. It is always some creep was creeping it up in a creepy bathrobe. And Rose wasn't the only powerful man in media accused of harassment yesterday. There was also New York Times White House correspondent Glenn Thrush. Yesterday, Vox published a piece about Thrush's history of bad judgment around young women journalists. In that report, the author described how Thrush cornered her at a bar by essentially dismissing a female colleague who was with them. Thrush tossed a $20 bill at her and told her to take a cab and leave us, the grown-ups, alone. I'm sorry, but you don't get to call yourself a grown-up if you dress like you're wearing a reporter Halloween costume. Another similarity in all these stories is the degree to which alleged abusers like Thrush went to silence the women they preyed on and undermine their careers. This culture of bullying and intimidation is toxic and pervasive, and in Thrush's case, he reportedly sought to portray the women he victimized as aggressors. Thrush frequently told versions of this story with differing young women as the subject. He would talk up a night out drinking with a young, attractive woman, usually a journalist. Then he claimed that she came on to him. In his version of these stories, Thrush was the responsible grown-up who made sure nothing happened. Can you imagine having the confidence to say young women came onto you while you were also wearing a fedora? And it wasn't just the news business that was rocked by sexual harassment allegations yesterday. BuzzFeed reported last night that Michigan Congressman John Conyers settled a wrongful dismissal complaint in 2015 with a former employee who alleged she was fired because she would not succumb to his sexual advances. But you never heard the story because the former employee was offered a settlement in exchange for her silence that would be paid out of Conyers' taxpayer-funded office budget. His office would rehire the woman as a temporary employee despite her being directed not to come into the office or do any actual work. A temporary employee who shows up but doesn't do any work. So basically, they made her a member of Congress. So, as a swirl of horrifying sexual harassment allegations consumes virtually every aspect of society, President Trump is publicly standing by an accused sexual predator. 9 women have accused Roy Moore of sexual assault, and Trump doesn't seem to care. I guess you could say Trump is, what's the phrase?
Soft on crime.
This has been A Closer Look.